All right, episode 2, calling this center court, I suppose, with Coach Webb. And I mentioned this my last episode with Coach Minders. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I love basketball. I love serving people, and I wouldn't coach if I didn't like the communication aspect of it. So this is always fun. I followed you from afar, and we can get into that a little bit. But it's going to be cool to kind of pick your brain a little bit. It's the first time we've met person to person. So just talking hoops is always a good time, especially with good people. I'm assuming you're a good person.
Yes.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or listening to the podcast, I've got Kelsey Winfrey on with me, Lebanon, Missouri graduate. It looks like 2016 Gatorade Player of the Year finalist. Does that sound right for the state? 17.
Yeah.
17. Okay. The 16-17 season. Okay. Give me a break. And then Miss Show Me basketball finalist as well. Mm-hmm. Very decorated high school player, obviously, which is why you went to Mizzou for a couple years. And we can talk about that in a second. But if you let's assume somebody like myself that doesn't know you personally at all, how would you introduce yourself, or what kind of backstory would you say if you had a 2-minute speech?
Okay, so I would obviously say that I'm Kelsey Winfrey. I'm a big sports addict. I like all sports, not just basketball. Basketball I just happened to fall in love with. I definitely would say that my faith is a big part of who I am, and part of how I live my life every day. That's how I get through school and sports, and I would say that everything I do with a passion, and I do it for God, and I would say that's about who I am.
Cool. So tell me about, you mentioned the multi-sport athlete. Tell me about high school. What sports did you play?
Okay, so in high school I did cross country, football, basketball, track, and volleyball.
That's a busy schedule.
Yes.
A lot of that overlaps. In fact, all of it overlaps.
Uh-huh.
Other than basketball, it's obvious you were a good basketball player. You're not retired yet, so everybody in Southwest Missouri still knows who Kelsey Winfrey is. Tell me about some of your accolades in other sports, and it could be things you did well or things you won. It might just be personal accolades or things that you achieved or enjoyed. You know what I mean? So tell me some of those other sports.
Yeah, so I like cross country because it's more of a mental sport.
Yeah.
There's a lot of training and stuff, but it makes you mentally tough.
Yeah, because running sucks.
It's the hardest sport I've ever done. And so I really like that aspect of it, and also it got me in shape for basketball. Right. So I played football my junior year.
Okay.
So I would get up at 6 a.m. and I would run, do my cross country workout. Then I'd go to school. Then I would do my second cross country workout after school, and then I would go to football practice for the remainder of the day, which would be an hour at football. But I went to football when they were finishing up and they were doing their conditioning. So then I had to do even more conditioning. And let me tell you, push-ups and football pads are not easy.
No.
Yeah.
No,
So I would go to football. I would kick a couple footballs, and then I would kind of watch practice. One time I even got in on the scout team, and I ran a couple routes.
Really?
And then my coach saw me do that, and I got in really bad trouble.
Yeah, nobody wants the place kicker getting hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that was that. I did run the ball one time.
Really?
We didn't tell my coach because we knew he wouldn't let me do it. And we told the snapper and the holder. That's the only people on the field who knew. We didn't even tell the rest of the team.
I'm sure they love that.
Yeah, and so the snapper just snapped it right to me, and I ran, and I literally got tackled at the 1-yard line.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Now you did score the first points for a female athlete for Lebanon High School, right?
Yes.
Is that right? That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
Has anybody done it since then?
No.
Okay. So I know we're not that far removed, but you hold on to that record as long as we can. That's awesome. Did you ever in your high school or collegiate career, and this is largely for me, I know some of the public knowledge and what you've done, but have you ever had a serious injury or even a nagging injury that's kind of held you back in any of those sports?
Not really. I've been very blessed in that area. The senior or the summer of my senior year, I tore my meniscus.
Okay.
And I had surgery on it. They just went in and like shaved part of it off.
Okay.
But I only was sitting out for like a month.
So it wasn't like a major tear then. That's okay. So that kind of proves my thesis a little bit. Like I was curious because, you know, I'm obviously in player development. Like I have a coaching background with teams, high school and club or whatever. But, you know, right now, full-time player development specialist. And, you know, I think the concern is if players specialize, especially too early, they can be prone to injuries, right? Like you doing cross country, track and field, volleyball, football, like basketball, all these different sports. I think, and you can correct me if you disagree, but I think it probably served you better as an athlete.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Yeah,
totally.
And kind of like helped your body as a basketball player. You know, basketball is a very three-dimensional sport, especially. Like it's hard to specialize, and especially, you know, in women's basketball, like the statistics for ACL injuries are much higher. So I think the multi-sport athlete, you know, doesn't maybe encounter that as much.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Because the main reason why like girls tear their ACL is because their quad or their hamstring is stronger than the other.
Okay.
So I think like doing cross country and even volleyball, like you're building a good base and stability for your muscles too.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I hadn't even thought about it that way. Because like when I'm thinking about it, you know, I mentioned basketball is a three-dimensional sport. A lot of jumping, a lot of lateral movement, a lot of stop and go in a linear line, that's, you know what I mean? But basically, like the way I'm looking at that is, you know, you're with all these other sports, you know, volleyball is very three-dimensional. You had to work different muscles in cross country and track and field and all this stuff. Yeah, I think it definitely strengthens those tendons and those ligaments, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And honestly, like it makes you probably a more explosive, dynamic athlete at the end of the day.
I did gymnastics when I was younger, all the way up to 6th grade, and I think that is what helped me the most.
I could see that.
Because you have to be so strong, like your core and your arms, and like dynamic in so many ways, and I think that really helped me to be like the athlete who I am today.
And like honestly, as I was coming up, which, you know, I played on some great teams and did some stuff. I was nowhere near the decorated high school athlete you are, but you know, it used to be a running joke about how unflexible I was, and I wish I had taken it more seriously because, you know, by the time I was a freshman and sophomore in college, my lower back pain was just out of this world because of my tight hamstrings and, you know, I had hip flexor issues and the whole 9 yards, right, which makes it very difficult to play basketball. So kind of changing gears here a little bit. Like we talked about multi-sport athlete, like from an athletic standpoint. Obviously, basketball is a very skilled sport. Did you still have to put in a lot of time in the off season?
Yeah, for sure.
Did you? And you played club ball and things of that nature, I'm assuming, right? So tell me a little bit about your experience, I guess, in the off season.
Okay, so my theory is there is no off season.
That's fair. Yeah.
You just work year round. I would say that I never really had to run for basketball because I did that with cross country. I'd always stay in shape that way. But getting shots up, I did do that a lot. I would go in, my coach would let me in the gym, and I would get on the gun and shoot. And at Mizzou, I would make about 2,000 makes a week. Right. Just getting extra shots. And a lot of what I like to do is visualize people on the court. You have to have a big imagination.
I agree.
When you're in the court, like in the gym by yourself.
Of course.
So just like acting like someone's setting you a ball screen and then read if they go over or under, and just do different shots depending on that. So
actually getting game shots.
Yeah, game shots. And like if you're just spot shooting on the gun, imagine someone closing out on you, or if they fly out of you, maybe take one dribble pull up. And that's a lot of what I've been doing, just visualization. And even like when I'm not on the court or like before practice or a game, I'll just like visualize myself making a 3-pointer or driving to the basket and stuff. That was a big thing we did at Mizzou. Okay. And they said that it was just as important as getting in extra shots.
That's interesting. So like, how did you guys intentionally work on that then? Like how did they hold you accountable? Yeah.
So before practice at Mizzou, we'd get there an hour early. Okay. And so it'd give us about 30 minutes to get dressed and changed and get taped and everything. And then about 30 minutes just to sit in our chair and work on like visualizing what we need to do better.
That's
or
awesome.
like if coach yelled at you in practice the previous day, imagining yourself doing that correctly so you don't get yelled at it again, essentially.
That's a really interesting concept, especially now as like, meditation and things are starting to like really hit pop culture.
Yeah.
Even me in my life, like once you remove yourself, like I'm a retired athlete. You know what I mean? I think we always have that piece of us that's a competitor and an athlete, but I'm not in the trenches like you are as a player every day. Like now I'm setting my own schedule. Now I'm having to, like, each day I don't have a coach or a professor or somebody like kind of setting my schedule and telling me what to do. And what's helped me be far more productive is like the moment I wake up, gratitude list, I'm like 5 things that I'm grateful for. What are they? Like really challenging myself to be positive right out of bed. And then some scripture, right?
Yeah.
And then immediately after that, about 10-15 minutes of meditation.
Yeah. Which
sounds super hipster, right? And like and I definitely get some crap for that, but I'm probably not any good at it. The big thing is, like you said, visualizing. Like it's just nice for me to kind of stop and reflect.
Yeah.
Stop and think, right? And I think those who look at visualizing or meditating, whatever you want to call it, and there's nuances, we assume it's the absence of thought, right? But I think it's just more like recognizing your thoughts.
Yeah.
And kind of being more in tune with them, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, there's so many athletes that waste their time in the gym.
Yeah.
Like we can talk about all the time you need to put in. I was just talking to some college players this morning. Like I had a workout with a team, and I was asking them, what are we going to do to apply this or to really add this to the bag, right? And they were like, we got to put in the reps. I was like, okay, I completely agree. But it's never been work smarter or harder. It's never been quality or quantity. It's only ever been both.
Yeah.
Which sounds like, as a successful athlete, you've kind of found that, right? What about during your seasons with other sports? Did you still find time to get some extra shots up?
Yeah. So usually, like, we would have basketball open gyms like in the fall or the spring, like as a team.
Right.
And so like that was a good way to get game reps. And then usually after every practice, I usually stay and make a certain amount of shots, or I'll go early and make a certain amount of shots.
And so that's even like if you were in cross country or volleyball or what have you.
Yeah. And then like AAU was also going on in, was it the spring?
Right. Yeah. It usually starts like practices.
Yeah. So I had that too. So.
Right. So that's nice, of course. I think what I'm trying to prove, and I already kind of knew this about you, just like intuitively, is you love basketball, you had some certain goals, and yet you didn't think like, oh well, for me to get the work done, I gotta only do this.
Yeah.
Is that true? Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, like hard work is a huge aspect of like being an athlete. Of
course.
Especially a student athlete, because time management and everything, you got to work hard on your on your studies. You got to work hard getting in the gym, and also like I think when you work hard, it also builds your confidence.
Right.
Because when you get into practice, when you get into games, you have the confidence of, oh, I've been in the gym, so I belong here. Yeah,
like I've always said, and I stole this from Drew Hanlon, but and I'm sure he stole it from somebody else, which is the nature of all this. But consistency leading to comfort, and like you can only truly be confident if you're comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't just fake it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You mentioned academics. When you were at Mizzou, you were SEC first year honor roll. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like, how did you balance academics and athletics at the college level? Because I know it's even more of a job at that point, right?
Well, I think in high school, being a multi-sport athlete really helped me.
Yeah.
Because I already had like the time management piece down.
Right.
And time management is the biggest thing.
That's it. Yeah.
Like I had to plan out every day how much I needed to study every day.
Yeah, you're better than me.
Yeah, so that was a big part of being able to be on the honor roll, was time management, knowing when practice is, knowing if I can study before, after, and how long.
Right. And then you were also all community service team for the SEC.
Yeah.
So like, what went into that? What'd you guys do whenever you were up there at Mizzou?
So I really like the aspect of community service, like giving back to the community, and I just have a serving heart, kind of like you like to serve others, and I find a lot of joy in helping others and being there for them. And at Mizzou, we had the opportunity to go to the Children's Hospital and just visit with the children there, and maybe take like a poster, sign it, give it to them, talk to them, and
it's
their
like
family.
made their day, basically.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that a lot. So every time that they had like a sign-up sheet to do that, I always did it. And then I also got to go to like some elementary schools and just read them a book.
Right.
We also had this thing, it was over Skype, where I would read a book to a class over Skype.
That's cool.
And we just did it
like
on
somewhere
campus.
like remote, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then Special Olympics, I was a coach of one of the basketball teams for Special Olympics. So that was really cool, just to have a relationship with those kids and just seeing them fight and playing basketball and having fun and encouraging them.
I've seen that firsthand as well. Like I didn't get to help with the basketball, ironically, but I did. I think it was my senior year of high school, Special Olympics track and field, and it's just it like made me so grateful for like my opportunities as an athlete. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then it kind of put everything in perspective too. It's like, if there's not joy, like I didn't see a single athlete there that didn't just have an immense amount of joy for what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Was there like, in all of those activities, is there like a single kid that stood out to you the most? Or maybe not the most, like we don't want to play favorites.
Yeah.
But somebody you remember?
I would say in the Special Olympics, there was a Down syndrome boy named Tim. Okay. And he just would go full throttle. Like he had no mercy. He was just going out on the court. He would steal the ball.
He's like the Russell Westbrook.
Yes. And one time he got laid out.
Oh, man.
And he started crying. And I went over there. I was like, Tim, you're okay. You're okay. Get up. And he got up and he let out a big grunt. He's like, oh, let's go. And so I think he was definitely my favorite working with him.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we can all learn from Tim.
Yes.
With like your experiences at Mizzou, how much did participating, not just as a multi-sport athlete in high school, but how much did participating in like National Honor Society and Fellowship of Christian Athletes help you? Because I know you were the president of FCA at Lebanon, right?
Yeah.
At one point. How much did that help you?
Yeah, it helped me a lot because I was so involved in high school. When I got to college, I was like, I still want to be involved. I still want to find FCA. I want to find ways that I can be involved in the campus, not just with basketball. And so there was a thing at Mizzou. It wasn't called FCA, it was called AIA, which is Athletes in Action, which is basically FCA.
Very similar.
And so I got involved in that, and I actually got to go to this camp called Ultimate Training Camp.
I think I've heard of this.
Yeah, and it was for it's for all D1 athletes.
Okay.
And you go there and you learn about principles like audience of one and how basically to play your sport for God and not to please others. Right. Which is a big aspect of sport, and like I feel like if anyone could get that down, then there's so much freedom in sport, and like freedom, you're not worried about.
Like you release like some of that pressure that
you're
other
not worried
athletes
about impressing anyone.
Which anymore is like with mental health awareness and stuff like that's so crucial, right? Like if your identity is only found in your success or failure as an athlete, I think a lot of people can learn from that experience from you, because I myself, I was involved heavily in FCA and NHS and stuff in high school. And then once I hit college, I lost my way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, I'm very transparent about my shortcomings. And I think part of the reason I only played college basketball a year and a half, I didn't even finish out 2 years, completely utter failure. A lot of it was, I got caught up in the party scene at my school. Yeah. I got caught up in trying to like, man, I'm already like at the bottom of this roster, trying to work my way up as an underclassman. And how do I get these guys to like me? Well, okay, everybody's drinking every day. And like, I even started going to chapel when I first got to school, and like, maybe went 3 times all year. You know what I mean? And everybody, when I first got there, I still remember it like it was yesterday. They're like, man, aren't you a basketball player? I'm like, yeah. They're like, what are you doing at chapel? Like, you guys don't do that. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, this is a whole different setting. You know what I mean? And I'm sure had I still anchored myself in some of those morals or some of the discipline that comes with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It probably would have been a much different story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Mizzou, there was like a lot of good times, but also like a lot of times where I struggled. And so I'd say like my faith really helped me through those times.
Right.
And my brother always tells me like the devil either has you or he's after you.
Right.
So I think like that's a good example. Like you went to college, you started going to chapel, and then so many different pressures. And that's the same as a lot of other student athletes. Like you go to college, it's a different culture. You run into different things.
You get away from home.
Yes.
You kind of like do your own thing, you know? And I think as well, like, you know, like staying strong in your faith and stuff is obviously fantastic. But I think the earlier that Christian athletes can learn to empathize with those who aren't Christians or aren't like whatever religion you want to claim, you know what I mean? Like at some point in time, we just have to start being good human beings to each other, regardless of race, ethnicity, beliefs. And, you know, I wish that's something I would have found sooner. You know what I mean? Because as you do these things like AIA and other activities that kind of get you off campus or kind of get you in different environments, you start learning not just about yourself but about others. And I think like the more we can empathize with others, the less judgmental we are. And I think the issue so many different classifications have with each other is we're just all judging each other, right? And like if we can just learn to not judge ourselves and like empathize with others a little more,
I agree.
Like
because
the day-to-day would just be so much better.
Because I sin just as much as you sin, as much as the next person sins. We're all in the same boat. So like,
but there's so much hypocrisy that it just makes me sick. You know what I mean?
Agree.
Because at the end of the day, we all suck.
Yes.
So it's not like you and I are perfect at it by any means. That's cool. Like at the end of the day, so like, you know, we've talked a lot about Mizzou, but you're not there right now, right? Like you came back home, back into the fold. You're with Drury now. Tell me about like that decision, like maybe what you went through personally, or like, you know, I wasn't there obviously. So kind of let us into that decision-making process a little bit, if you would. And then, you know, talk to us a little bit about why Drury, you know?
So I prayed about this decision for a long time, and a lot of thought went into it, a lot of conversations with my family and a few conversations with my coach at Mizzou before I decided to transfer. And just talking to a lot of people, and I love Mizzou. I like the college. I like the town. It was my dream school, and I got to live out my dream of being on the Mizzou team. And I just got to the point where I wanted to play more. I wanted more minutes. I'm a competitor, so it was fun cheering on my teammates, and I embraced that role. But I came to a point where I was like, man, I just want to play. It's hard to watch your teammates playing, and you're just kind of sitting back. So
especially when you love it.
So I did love my time at Mizzou, and I don't regret going there. But I decided that to transfer to Drury after a lot of prayer and talking, and going down to D2, I don't have to sit out an extra year. So that was a big thing about whether I wanted to go D1 or D2. And then Drury is just an amazing program. Coach Miller recruited me my freshman year in high school. So there's a little rapport there. Already. She recruited me really hard, and she's good at that. Yes, she is very good. And so as soon as I entered that transfer portal, I was getting calls from her about every 5 minutes. She was calling me and calling my family and saying, we need to get you up here. And I mean, Drury is basically D1. Yes. Like once you're that good of a D2 program, you are beating many D1 programs. Yes, and the facilities are D1 comparable, and there's so much talent on that team already. I mean, they made it to the Final Four last year. Would you lose one girl? Yeah, we lost one girl. So like you got big shoes to fill. So just knowing that about the program, and knowing how good of a Coach Miller was, and just knowing like her intentions and everything, like I feel like it would have been stupid of me not to choose Drury. And I mean, at the end of the day, like it's not an easy decision though. You know what I mean? Like I think we need to talk more, and like I'm no guru or thought leader, like I'm definitely stealing this from others, but we have to talk more about like
what failure looks like, or changing our minds, because sometimes it's not failure. Sometimes it's just changing our minds. And I think sometimes we look at folks like, I'm 27 now. I have worked a plethora of jobs and changed my mind so many times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I think maybe like generations prior would probably look at that and be like, no, like you gotta be a man of your word. Like, you chose this job, you gotta stick it out. It looks bad on your resume, quote, blah, blah, blah. I think there's something to be said for when somebody's strong enough to be like, you know what, this isn't what I want. I've really thought about it and I know why it's not what I want. Like, this is a rational decision. Yeah. And now I no longer care what anybody thinks. I'm going to do what I want. Yeah. Right. And do you think like that kind of thought process and the humility that it took to do that, like, is going to spur you forward at Drury?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it wasn't an easy decision at all. It was months and months of work into that decision, and my parents always told me to not be a quitter. Right. You're not going to quit whatever.
And so it feels like you are.
Yeah, and so part of me is like, well, I need to stick this out. I need to get in the gym more, and I just got into this feeling where I felt like I was stuck. Right. Like, no matter how much I improved, no matter if I got worse, like, I feel like I was just stuck in my same situation. So a lot of it was I want to end my basketball career on a great note, and I want to finish strong in a sense. And I feel like Drury, they're a national championship caliber team. Like, this is a perfect place for that. But the decision wasn't easy because I made so many good friends at Mizzou. I have a boyfriend at Mizzou, and so it's not like it was like so easy coming here. And so I think it already has made me into a better person, I feel like, and I definitely think it's going to help me in the future. And I've already made like a lot of new friends here, and I feel like I am at Drury for a purpose. And so I already think that, like, I don't regret it at all, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I know I made the right decision.
You know what I mean? Like, I think we never know the alternative. Yeah. Like, nobody's going to know what would have happened if you stayed at Mizzou. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it just really matters for you, right? Like, that's the healthy decision. Yeah. And I think, I try to stay plugged in with other coaches, obviously. That's part of my growth and part of me trying to connect with different levels. And, you see it all the time, the conversation about, well, like, look how many transfers there were this year. You know what I mean? And, like, everybody's adding up the number of transfers, and it's definitely going up every year. I think some of that is probably worth noting, and we obviously need to address it as coaches. But I also think we need to ease up on the judgment of players and being like, they need to stick it out. They're soft. They couldn't make it, or they shouldn't have gone D1 to begin with. I think you can't fault somebody at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old for pursuing opportunities. You never really know how good or bad something is till you're in it. Yeah. Right. And, I just think, like, outside looking in, as coaches, that's something we could probably do better. Yeah. Right. Because like, if I just read it on paper, like, oh, Kelsey Winfrey transferred, like, I could look at that in 100 different ways. Yeah. But I don't really know because I don't have the context. Yeah. Right. And I just think, like, that's a good conversation. That's the reason I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit. Yeah. Is as coaches, like, we have to get better about this. Like, at the end of the day, we're here because we love basketball and we want to serve players and families. Right. Yeah. And so, like, the judgment has to stop. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's going to make you a better player for Drury, truthfully. Yeah. Like, because, you went through that maturation and like that decision making and all that, you're stepping in to a new team, but you're a different player. Yeah. You know what I mean? At the same time, it's not just a different team, same Kelsey. Yeah. Right. Like, you definitely have grown from that. Sure. I'm assuming anyways. How has preseason gone thus far? You guys have officially started practice. Yeah. But you obviously would have had some preseason before that. What's your initial feelings? So preseason at Drury is a lot different than at Mizzou. So we have some preseason conditioning tests that we have to do, and there's 3 of them. And if you don't pass them, you have to be in breakfast club, which is you get up an hour before our weight workout and you do extra conditioning so you can pass your conditioning test. Yeah. So And you didn't have cross country this summer, so
yeah, I haven't done cross country in 2 years. So the first test was the 200s.
Okay,
and it was
sucks.
8 200s. I was like, oh, that I can do that.
Right.
That I can do that. And you had to average 35 seconds. So I was like, oh, like that's a piece of cake. I can do that. Well, the thing was, you don't get a break.
Yeah, you're
so
like
you
right
run the
back
200, you jog back across the field, and then you start again once you get back.
Man.
And I didn't put all that together. And let's just say I passed with a 34.8.
Oh, man.
And I puked for about 5 minutes afterwards. So that's how my preseason started. And I was like, man, Coach Miller is on a different level.
Right.
She has no mercy for you. When she sees you puking, she's done her job.
Right.
So I really love Coach Miller. She is
She's
amazing.
Gonna push you. Right.
She loves defense.
Mm-hmm.
Our first practice, we didn't do any offensive drills.
Right.
It was all defense.
I'm looking
actually,
forward
like
to
our first 3 practices, it was like all defense. So
she's been making the tour of coaches' clinics, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of talking about your guys' defensive philosophy, and she and I are speaking at the same clinic coming up in a couple weeks. So I'm looking forward to kind of watching that, picking her brain a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What were the other 2? That's the one test, right? What were
so
the
other one was the mile.
Okay.
And guards had to run it in 6:30. Posts had to run it in 7 minutes.
Oh, that's easy. You
yeah,
got that.
I had that one down.
Yeah.
200s though, that was fun. And then the next one was suicide. So it was 8 suicides, and between each suicide you had to shoot 10 free throws.
Right.
And you had to average 32 seconds on the suicide, and you had to average 75% on your free throws.
Okay, so it's like the whole. There's a mental and the physical. That's actually really nice. Like not really nice. You probably wouldn't describe it that way.
Yeah.
But it's creative. I hadn't thought of it.
My free
like
throw
that.
routine got longer.
Did it?
Yeah,
you
because I
use
needed
it all
more
10
of a
seconds.
break, so I took like 3 really, really slow dribbles.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
the Tim Duncan routine. You're just like staring at the rim. That's awesome. So no breakfast club for you, I take it. Awesome.
No breakfast club.
What would you say? So like you mentioned her defense,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'm gonna pick her brain myself, obviously. But like, what has stood out to you other than just the emphasis? Is there anything like X and O wise that stood out to you that maybe was different than Mizzou? I mean, I'm sure there's something different.
One thing that I've really liked about her defense, basically you can't go wrong if you are working hard, if you're flying around.
Like you're scrambling.
Yeah, you're scrambling, which I like that a lot because you don't really have to second guess yourself. You just go, 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 go. And her offense, we have 5 set plays, which I like a lot because at Mizzou we had like 30.
Yeah,
and I'm not even exaggerating.
Yeah,
we had a thick book, and it was just hard for me to.
There's more of a system mindset here.
Yeah, and it was hard for me to grasp all of them. So like the 5 set plays, like I know good, and we have other options off of those plays.
Of course, yeah.
So I really like how she's structured that, and she really plays to everyone's strengths.
That's good.
Like she noticed your weaknesses. She noticed what your weakness is. She'll tell you that, and she'll tell you, "I'm gonna have you playing here because this is where I see you best fit."
Right.
And I really like that how she's just straightforward with you.
Just transparent.
And I was in the gym shooting a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And she came in there and she noticed something wrong with my follow through.
Right.
So she stayed in there for about 30 minutes just helping me with my follow through, which was really cool because like she's the head coach and I know that she had like a lot of other things she could have been doing. So it really meant a lot to me for her just to spend that time working on my shot with me.
I think that does speak volumes, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something I can't remember who I like heard this from in high school, but it stuck with me, and it was, and I think it's a relatively popular saying, but like the way you spell love is Time, right? Like if you're like willing to actually invest in somebody, really like the actions speak louder than words, if you will. I'm big too on like from the player development side, like tripling down on one's strengths. You know, like we get asked all the time, like by other coaches even, like how do you decide how to spend the off season? And I think the time that I spent watching Drew Hanlon out in LA or Chicago or St. Louis, any of these places I've been with him, or speaking to Coach Boyle, even like down at Montverde, helping Luke Zeller out in Indiana, like these great basketball minds who've played for great basketball minds, seeing they all have the commonality of relationships, and then like how they approach development, whether it's a head coach or an assistant coach with a team or like a player development professional, right?
Yeah.
I know Drew always does like a SWOT analysis, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And like we really triple down on the strengths, like take what you're good at and get great at it.
Yeah.
You know, spend like 80% of your time on that. And then the other 20% is like threats. It's not even really like the weaknesses. It's like threats. You know what I mean? Like at your position, if you couldn't, you know, consistently shoot a three, it's probably somewhat of a threat for your playing time.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you're expected to be a primary ball handler and you can't handle pressure for 80 feet.
Yeah.
Or if I'm a big man or, you know, a post and I'm not able to clean the glass. You know, like we have these threats. But if I'm, you know, a 5'11" point guard playing a high major, I don't need to have a good post game.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's interesting to hear. Like she's had so much success and it falls in line with so many of these other great minds that I've had the blessings of like being able to be around. And it's just funny to me how every coach is a little different, but some of that stuff just never changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would you say like you're most excited about going into this season? Like other than the fact that, I mean, returning roster, all that stuff, new team, fresh start, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about for this season?
I would say just having the opportunity to play and to play with the girls that I get to play with because they're so good. Like I feel like we could compete with a lot of D1 schools.
No, that's a fact.
Like we have a great starting five and then we have a great second five. Yeah. And so I think it's just going to be super fun playing with them and just watching them do defense in practice because I haven't exactly got the whole gist of it yet because it's so like it's like controlled chaos. Yeah. And so just being able to run that defense with them, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And so I think that's what I'm looking forward to most is just having fun playing basketball with my teammates.
Right. And you're kind of stepping into the fire. Like I'm assuming with how last season ended for them and how close they came to that perfect national championship run and falling just short. I'm assuming you're stepping into something like everybody else is amped up probably even now.
Yes.
Is that fair to assume?
Yes.
Yeah. Like that taste is still in their mouth.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day we talk about national championship. We talk about how these teams lost this people. Right. We have everyone. How good we're looking for this season, and it's on everyone's minds constantly. Right.
Like that is the expectation.
Yes.
Does that bring some pressure?
No, not really.
No. Like you're just going to work.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, we know like what we can do, and I don't think anyone's nervous at all. I don't think anyone feels any pressure.
Well, and that's consistency, comfort, confidence. Like you guys are putting in the work.
Yeah.
You got everybody you need, and now at this point it's like executing. Yeah. Right. I'd like to like change gears before I let you go. You know, we've talked a lot of basketball, but earlier referenced how that's not your identity, right? Other than your faith and like paying attention to school, what else brings you joy, like off the court?
I would say, first of all, being in Christ, that gives you full joy and fulfillment. Right. Like, I've tried fulfilling, let's say like this cup. I've tried fulfilling it with sports. I've tried to fill it with relationships, and I just feel empty afterwards. Right. And so when I find true joy,
like that baseline is always there,
and experience true joy, it's when I'm feeling it with God, with the Word, when I'm serving others, loving others, and showing others God's light and love. Right. So that's what I would say is when I experience full joy, is that. Right. And just playing for God and doing everything for God. Nothing else makes me more happy. But so there's like the faith aspect of joy, and then like my family brings me a lot of joy. Right. Just being around them and around my siblings.
Now you're closer too, right?
What'd you say?
Now you're closer.
Yes,
yeah,
now I'm
sure
closer.
they love that.
I can like drive home for dinner, which is nice.
Yeah.
Like being with my grandparents, like
what's the best? I'm sorry to interrupt. What's your best dinner at home? What is like the dinner? Like you know, like crap, I'm going home tonight.
Yeah. Beans and cornbread.
Beans and cornbread.
Yeah. So I have. It's weird because
right.
My parents will only make it for me.
Are we talking like red beans, white beans, like
brown beans?
Brown beans.
Brown beans, cornbread, mac and cheese,
Okay.
potatoes,
Right. So
all mixed together in a
like
big bowl.
After like conditioning's over, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
After you did all your tests with Coach Miller.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that is a hearty meal.
Yes, that's my favorite though.
That's funny. So yeah, I was curious about that, like with you coming back to Drury or coming back to Southwest Missouri, how excited you would be to like, obviously, family's close, you know what I mean? Like my wife and I, we're very independent. And so like living in Denver was fantastic, but it's also cool to be in Southwest Missouri and be able to like see family.
Yes.
I don't do it as well as I should. Like, Mom, if you're watching this, I love you. We get busy, but it's awesome that they can come watch. I'm sure they watch you at Mizzou, but
they came to like all the games.
It's less gas.
Yes.
Now. It's an easier drive.
Yeah.
So that's cool to see. What would you say? So like final thoughts as we wrap this up, because I don't want to take up much more of your time. What would you say, like, after it's all said and done, after you're done playing basketball, whenever that is, what would you say you're most excited about for the next chapter? And I'm not asking, so like I firmly believe like in our young 20s, mid 20s, later 20s, whatever, we don't need plans for the future. Like I don't care what your 5-year plan is, because it's going to change tomorrow. But I'm asking, like, what are you most excited for? Because obviously you're going to miss playing, but that doesn't mean you're done, right? So what would you say to that?
Well, I have a few goals for when I'm done playing basketball.
What would those be?
I want to run a marathon.
Oh, man.
So
why?
I want to do that.
Like a half or like a full?
A full marathon.
Oh,
I ran a half marathon before.
Really?
Yeah, in cross country. So I want to train and run a full marathon.
Okay.
That's one of my goals. And another one of my goals is I want to write a book.
Okay.
Like about myself and my journey, and just how like I've changed as a person, and how God has helped me through so many different aspects of life. So I want to do that. I'm not really sure how to go about that.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's one of my goals.
I'd have to Google it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some templates.
Yeah. So those two things I'm excited for. It's something different. I'm not really used to, like writing. I'm not used to doing that. And,
of course.
I'm kind of used to running from cross country, but
a marathon's a whole other animal.
Yeah. And I think it will keep me in like the competitor attitude, like training every day to get to this certain goal of being able to run 26 miles. So I'm excited for that. And also I want to be a nurse.
Okay.
So just like building relationships with my patients and helping them in their time of need. I'm excited for that too.
That'll be exciting for sure. Like, because each and every day, I mean, I've talked about this with so many folks, like, if you love what you're doing at the end of the day, and if you have a heart for people, like, it just doesn't become work anymore at that point. The marathon thing, I'll leave you to that. I'm not going to join you in that quest at all. I'm all for challenging myself, but distance running is not my strong suit. Well, Kelsey, I appreciate it. I look forward to watching you guys play this year. Obviously, excitement building up as the season gets closer. Look forward to picking Coach Miller's brain a little bit and kind of hearing her side of the defense. And but yeah, this year's going to be fun. Like, not just obviously for you girls, like you need to enjoy it and enjoy each other, enjoy being in that moment, because it's not going to be there forever. But Southwest Missouri has an amazing basketball community, and so I just know they're going to band around you, and that's going to just be fun to watch from afar. So appreciate you coming on. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon.
Yes.